Once more we return to the fireside where three companions on the pilgrim path have gathered. Last we joined them, they began sharing their honest stories of change. Tonight, these three friends continue their conversation, speaking openly about the joys and struggles of being reshaped together into the likeness of Jesus. No one walks this road alone. Listen as their shared testimony deepens, revealing how God uses friendships, accountability, and His Word to transform ordinary believers into a living witness for Christ. This is a Jesus Followers podcast.
All right, we're wrapping up the week here on a Jesus Followers podcast, and we will be back second Monday of next week. That's Tuesday, if you're not familiar with the Jesus Followers podcast lingo, at 5 a.m., live at 5, 8 o'clock for you cheaters on the East Coast. And I say that in all love. I wish I was up at 8. I wish I could broadcast it at 8, but over here on the West Coast, it's 5. So 8, 7 Central, 5. You guys get the drill. Listen, we're picking up this discussion here with my friend Mike. And Mike and you know, producer Birdley and I, we all used to work at the same church, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from my friend Mike. And the reason it's here on Bright Spots is because I want to remind you to lean into the relationships you have around you. And there are those that just aren't going right. But man, as long as someone keeps coming back to the table, keeps trying to work it out, and keeps trying to persist, man, we need to persist just as hard, if not harder, because none of us are perfect. And all of our misconceptions about Jesus rub up against each other. And the idea is that as iron sharpens iron, man, there's some rub there. That we're going to work it out together, so one sharpens another. The crucible, right? Where the silver's melted and the impurities rise to the top. God takes care of them. It's the refiner's fire. All of this imagery that look, we don't get remade by living the easy life. We get remade by leaning into some difficult things with each other. That God is using those tensions to reshape us into the image of His Son. Now, where we left off, I was really working with Mike. He's a really transparent leader. And this is one of the aspects of great leadership that I aspire to. That when you're leading and you're leading well, it's not about you, it's about the objective. You are a servant who is providing vision, and the vision is what drives things. Your authority is the vision, is the goal. It's the Jesus at the end. It's not, I'm not in charge. It's Jesus who's in charge. And so as chief visioneer, if vision and goal and what you're doing as a leader, you can put out on the table apart from you and allow people to criticize that and not take that personally. What a beautiful thing. So a few things to listen for. We're picking up right after he's answered some things. And if you want to catch up, just go listen to last Friday's episode, Bright Spots, 3 Amigos. This is part 2 of Bright Spots, 3 Amigos. And listen for some of those themes as you go through this, because that's what we're about here. Just leaning into life together and trying to work out our differences over Jesus to increase the light that we can shine. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to take another step together towards following after Jesus. You've got the interview on the other side of this intro. So let's go, Chuck.
And being willing to be less than the least became the greatest of all. Let us imitate Him who was King of kings and yet a servant of servants.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave.
Would you turn on my microphone, please?
It's right here in the hall closet.
One of the things about that is that you didn't just say, okay, leaders, we're going to a leadership conference. You brought the subject of leadership to the entire community our local faith community. And you said we all can improve in how we lead, because we never know when we're going to be the person that has to, pick up the reins and move the cart down the road. Mm-hmm. So, man, that's one thing that I really appreciated, that and then it opened the cap on leadership and how we lead, including how you lead, which was really transparent and really humble. And if somebody had an idea, how do we, one of the questions that I kind of had here was, something about, you've always been changing, but you don't change for change's sake. And so what is the anchor then? What is the question we're asking ourselves, in terms of, okay, you're a really transparent leader. People could come and say, hey, what if we did it differently? What's going through your mind about that empowered that kind of discussion? And how would you tell someone else, like, here's how you can adopt that kind of a mindset? If you had to talk to other pastors and say, who want to create this environment of growth and change, how can they manage that?
For me, I would just be honest with you guys. I realize I'm a terribly insecure person, and so for me, there's always been this internal battle of fighting against my own self-doubt, insecurities, things like that. I was, I've told you guys are the books that I will never read because I don't understand even the title, let alone the words or where to find those books in the library. And I say that because it's not in my wiring to go look for those things. If you would, you recommend it, I'll probably go get it because of who recommended it to me. Then I'll have to have you guys read it to me and draw pictures. But there's this. But I never wanted my insecurity to be the holdup for the work of the kingdom through the local church and the local gathering of God's people. Those who chose to follow Jesus, those who wanted to learn to follow him. I never wanted my insecurity to be, well, that's the reason he's the idiot, right? That couldn't get out of the way. And so I had to make the choice all the time. Gosh, Bob, you were so gracious to me because you started me in realms of thinking, man, that exploded my brain. And I would go home with a headache, not because you talked, but because you were saying things that I couldn't comprehend in my framework that I had grown up with. And it challenged me. And I go, I can either push him out of my life or I can lean in and go, he has something that I don't have that will help me be a better whatever people need. And so I just have decided, that man, I don't need to be in the spotlight. I need just to create the stage for people to stand on so the thing that God is doing in them can get done. And sometimes you take a flyer on someone, right, and it just totally tanks. But at least they had the opportunity to do it. And you don't shoot holes in the bottom of the boat, right, or below the water line. You want to not set people up for failure. You want them to succeed, and you want them to have the opportunity to feel this sense of, man, God's pleasure with them as they take a step of faith, because they believe that faith, right? What the writer of Hebrews, I think, said that without faith, it's impossible to please God. And here's their act of faith, how big or small, and give them the opportunity to do that. Because how will they ever get better? How will they ever? Somebody gave me a shot, when I was terrible, and someone gave me an opportunity. That's how I became Rob's youth pastor, right? I mean, they weren't going to hire me because I was 23 years old. And because of somebody else going, hey, give the guy a shot, they gave the guy a shot. But I think for me, it's just, I love the local gathering of God's people. I think it's the hope of the world. It ought to be the one place where people can come, get their questions answered, get their needs met, and discover I think, again, I heard you say it on a podcast, what Jesus was like when he walked the earth. They can experience that today through the people who've chosen to follow him. And it will take all of us to reflect his beauty and his wonder and his majesty and his health and all that in his life. But if people came in contact with that kind of community, man, what a difference it could be. And again, I just didn't want to be the guy that goes, well, yeah, it's got to be about me, you know.
Or we can only get as far as me, you know.
Yeah,
so
right.
I'm the bottleneck, and that's where we're gonna, you know. And that was one of the things. So just, you know, quick tip, something you guys always did. That, pardon, my phone keeps going off. I keep trying to silence the dumb thing, but apparently it doesn't like that. Summers. So one thing I learned from you, take summers and give people an opportunity to preach and teach and help coach them up about what they're going to say, and have coffee with them a few times and help them figure it out, help them work through their points, encourage them. You know, if they can only do part of a message, you know, if maybe an interview, you're giving them an opportunity to communicate the gospel, and that's going to provide confidence for them. Even if they never stand on a stage again, it's going to provide confidence in their one-on-one relationships when they try and communicate the gospel. But the other thing too that I'm hearing you saying, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's the vision of what we can become that allows us to let go of our own issues, right? It's that vision of the local church and its impact on the community, and not wanting to be the guy that's keeping God from doing the thing. And when we focus on where we're going, well, then it's easy to explain to people. And that's one thing I always appreciated. You know, we come with a thing, you know, hey, what if we did it this way? You would always have a thoughtful question back. Well, how does that get us to be the people of God in this community in the way that Jesus wants us to be? Right?
Yeah. I just think how will anyone, I was just thinking about you, Rob. If you're watching this and you haven't figured out, Rob is one of the smartest guys you will ever listen to.
Oh,
And really, these two guys, they read more, they study more, they invest more. But Rob, you were always self-doubting about, oh, I can't teach, or I can't even do the welcome, right? And that's where we started. Like, just here's the bullet points, right? And sure, the first week was rough, not because you couldn't do it, but because you were just nervous and never done it. And I think anytime we try something new, we feel that awkward. It's like the first time you go to the gym ever, and you're looking at all this stuff going, everybody knows it's my first time. They don't care. They're just glad you're there.
Yep.
And they're just glad you stick around. And you find people are willing to help you and give you assistance and guidance and teaching and all these things. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. And then you stop thinking about, oh, how am I appearing? And you just start doing the very thing that is needed in those moments, right? I sometimes I think we've turned. We always talk about on Sundays, we want to blur the line between stage and audience. We want to blur that line where we are all about the audience of one, who is Jesus, that we're trying to interact with on this day. And we're going to use these things to help people on this day interact with him and not interact with us. I sometimes I think today it's almost like we made the kind of a superstar, and it's just a part of our culture and part of human nature, I think. And someone's got to be up front. Someone's got to be leading. And I get that, but sometimes it may suck the wind out of some people's sails who might just need an opportunity, to find they can play, they can be a part. They've got a contribution to make, and that their life is not just to be a sitter and soaker. Their life is to be a contributor to the beauty and the wonder of who Jesus is in the world.
Yeah. Keeping that vision out in front. It was always, and what I experienced, Rob, you tell me if this is, I think this is what you would answer as well. that Mike, when we came to you and said, hey, what if the answer was no, the answer was never no because I don't like that, no because I'm the pastor, no because I'm in charge. The answer was, well, like I don't care, but how does that get us from here to there? How does that move the ball towards a greater community of Jesus followers? How does that make us look more like Jesus? And you always said, if Jesus did it, you can't vote no. I love that line, right?
That's right.
So, hey, we have a vote on some things around here, but if Jesus did it, you can't vote no. So one of the things that in line with that is that, and around this kind of concept of change, you had the tagline that we want to be predictably unpredictable.
Unpredictable.
Right?
Yeah.
But we don't want to change for change's sake. So, where did that come from? And yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot about that a little bit.
Man, well, I think it came from something someone said at the leadership summit one year, and it just stuck with me. And then when you start reading, again, you start reading the narratives written about Jesus, especially by his eyewitnesses, right? John and Matthew, who, they were in the trenches with him. They saw everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? All that went around and circled around everyday existence with Jesus for those 3.5 years, and he just seemed to be that way. There was not a cookie cutter formula for how he cared for, met people, taught people. He had his stump speech, right? Love your enemies, pray for those that persecute you, right? He had the stump speech that he would give, and it were recorded in different settings to people that never changed. But how he engaged people was unique to that person. And so for me, it was about it seems like in the church world, where we gather on a weekend and we come into a service, everything, we toss creativity to the side at some level, that we think it's just become where we just show up, we know exactly what to do, and how the thing's going to go in an hour and 50 minutes. We're checking out, we're walking down the road and going to our lunch at Texas Roadhouse or whatever.
Lucky.
And and so to me, it was, once you get into that rhythm that is so consistent that has no changes in it, other than maybe you sing different songs or a different person prays, right, or a different sermon topic. If that environment doesn't change much, you can kind of hydroplane right through the whole experience and miss it. But when people can get used to the fact that life has changed, everything changes. Life has unexpected turns and those interruptions that you didn't plan for, right? That there's got to be, and how do you embrace that and stay connected in it? How do you stay engaged so you don't miss it? The great moments that are happening to you, because it's not what you expected. And so that's kind of where that came from. And we just tried to say, hey, let's keep creating an environment every weekend, because we know this will be the largest gathering we have. Let's try to create this environment that tells a story that changes so that they're going to look around and go, oh my gosh, what might happen today? Oh, hey, hey. And it kind of piques their curiosity. They lean in a little bit. It might be more aware of the Holy Spirit that day than if we just did the same routine thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. It breaks up. Well, it also works that muscle of change. Mm-hmm. If we're trying to grow and change, and I come in and things aren't where they were, I can't sit there and say, well, where's my spot? My spot is in the community. My spot isn't this chair, this spot,
Yeah.
And that kind of, that always struck me as something that you had a culture where, and then when you met actual change, real substantive change, it wasn't the first time that anyone has ever had to deal with change in the community. We had regular practice about stuff that doesn't matter, like where the tables are set up or how the chairs are organized. It's
Right.
like, if you're going to freak out about that, I don't know what to tell you, you know, but,
Yeah.
but then you've already had that regular every week thing. And so then when we were having other conversations, it was like that muscle already had a little bit of resistance on it. So it could handle a little more weight.
Yeah. And, I think for all of us, right, change creates a sense of destabilization. Change then it leads to insecurity. It exposes our insecurity and then creates fear. And when fear starts to arise, it becomes very paralyzing, because to change takes risk. And you've got to be willing to say, sometimes it's saying, hey, where I am is not right, or how I thought is not right. Other times it's thinking, hey, how I thought is the foundation which I'm going to add to it.
Yeah.
Or so I started when my mom got sick about 5 years ago with Parkinson's dementia, which is a really weird combination. For her, it started taking away her mobility. She never had tremors or things like that. And as it took away her mobility, and because my dad had Guillain-Barré when he was 58 years old, which left him pretty much paralyzed from the elbows down and from the knees down. He can drive a car, which scares the heck out of most of us. He's been doing that for years. He managed to figure out how to work power tools. Again, a very scary proposition if you're, but I realized that if mom ever fell, or if mom ever needed help getting out of a chair, it'd be very difficult for my dad to do that. And so I stopped running and I started lifting, and I bought a piece of equipment that's in my garage. And because I wanted to be physically strong. And when I was a young kid, I told my mom that she would never wind up in a nursing home, no matter what. And that I'd always be here to take care of her and help. And so there were times where, mom had a hard time getting up, or she would have like fallen or tripped, and dad would call and say, hey, your mom needs you. And the thing I never wanted my mom to be embarrassed. So she would, because if you guys knew my mom, she hated attention. She just loved caring for people from behind the scenes, and nobody would know. But I never wanted her to see me struggle to pick her up. I never wanted it to be where she felt like she was a burden on me to have to come do this. And so I started to lift and exercise. And so over time, I get learning more about how to lift right, what exercises do what. And even 2 weeks ago, I changed my workout to start working some different muscle groups that I'm going to need as I get older to be stronger, right? And you feel stupid doing it, because I'm like there are high school kids that can pick up 3 times this weight in these dumbbells, but it's like there's a purpose in it, and it will ultimately serve me well if I learn to change, and it will hopefully be for the good of other people that I'm changing. So I'm just building on it rather than retrofitting everything.
Yeah. And that's where we talk about change a lot here, but we're not talking about reinvention. We're not talking about reinventing Jesus. And yeah, some things you need to reconsider, but I have yet to find something that, if I read all of the writings of what we would generally consider, orthodox or normative Christianity over the past 2,000 years, that my various view on a given thing where we disagree, or all those views, is just outside of anything. It's brand new. I've not found this kind of brand new theology as much as I've read. Rob, I don't know about you. When I do find that stuff, that's kind of progressive reinvention. But when we're talking about Reformation, we're talking about a return to what was already known in the first century and was written about in these 27 writings. And it's a big challenge to do something new. Mike, I've started, and I'm not as good as you, man. I'm on resistance band stuff, and I'm on... I read that study about, doing air squats every 45 minutes throughout the day, right?
Yes.
So, I got my timer going. I'm trying to do the air squats every 45 minutes. Cause man, I got, when I wear shorts, the most common comment that I hear, is, people will ask, are those your legs or are you riding a chicken? Um, so, so I'm trying to build up the leg muscle because I got a 6-year-old, and for the same reasons as you, like differently as your mom, but I don't want there to be a moment where my son wants to have a catch and I can't go out and have a catch because, I'm, hey, sorry, bud, I can't throw the ball around because my legs hurt and I just can't do it. And so, working on building up that muscle. But that's a great analogy. I mean, Paul talks about, or the author of Hebrews talks about running the race, right? And persevering, and training for that race as if you're going to win it. Oftentimes, we run into these complicated theological issues, or church-related issues, or social issues. We've gotten to a certain point in life where, it's like, well, that would be so much work to go back and think about all that. That's a lot of study. And it's easier when you're young. There's a real benefit because, I learned a bunch of instruments when I was young. The maintenance on keeping that skill up once or twice a week, and I keep that skill up. There's things I'm trying to learn when I'm old, trying to be fluent in Koine in a dead language from the first century. Man, if I don't give that some serious time every day, and so it's a challenge. So what keeps us going in those challenges? I'll just kind of throw that out there at you guys. I could give you my 2 cents, but people hear me talk enough around here.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know where the thought in me is always, I just need to be better. I just need to keep getting better. I need to keep growing. I need, I never imagined being as old as I am. I never did. I think in my head, I will always be, the 35-year-old, right? And I think in many ways, I'm a late bloomer in this new word I'm trying to live out, this word of maturing, that and maturing driven by a specific thing, which is maturing because of love. That love requires something of me for the good of another, and for them to experience that, I have got to continue to mature and learn to love better. And I realized as I have thought back, where that began was way back even in college. That idea of love, but it really didn't start sinking in until I was with you guys, and when we got to serve together, right? And that honestly, that was a ton about what I was reading. It was a ton of what I was wrestling with at night, all the time, and so I think now, at the age that I am, I look at, man, God, I would love to be around 30 more years. In family genealogy, there's a real good shot that's going to happen. So I hope that I become more kind and more gracious and more deferring to others rather than demanding of my own way. And it is not always easy, right? For me, because there's a drive inside of me that's always been there that wants to accomplish something, that wants to do something great for the kingdom, and the underlying current of that is to be known for something. You know what I mean? And but I want Ruth, my bride of 41 years to go. I'm so thankful that we have stuck it out, and so thankful for the way you have loved me over the course of our life together, and for my kids to say that, and for my grandkids to say that, and you know, and to know, for them to know that that was all brought about because I wanted to know who Jesus is, and I wanted to be like him. I didn't want to make an excuse why I wasn't.
Yeah. It's good. And that's kind of it's funny. In my early 20s, I wanted to be known. And like, this is real common, guys, they want to conquer the world and take over the world. I don't know if you've seen the meme, where the guy puts his hand on the girl's head. It's a little TikTok video or something, and then it flashes to all the things the girl's thinking about. Summer and blowing dandelions and smiles and sunshine and whatever, and the ocean, whatever. And then she puts her hand on his head, and it's just all the stresses of life and all of the everything, and then she like has this reaction and gives him a hug. It's a nice little skit, they did.
Right.
But isn't that kind of the guy thing, that if you're not familiar with the mind of a lot of men, is that it's the weight of the world that we often feel on our shoulders. And learning how to walk in grace and give that to God and be more like Jesus, even though it feels like every step we take is just towards some kind of a cross. And, I just, it's that when I started out in my 20s, man, I wanted to be known for something. And now I think, what I really want to leave behind, the thing that compels me and drives me forward is, gosh, I wish that people could get around me and see through me to who Jesus is. And if I don't improve, if I don't do better than I'm doing now, then that window is still pretty muddy. And, I got to keep cleaning it. And the frustrating thing is you just can't do it yourself. You can't nail that third. There's a lot you can do, and we cooperate with God as he transforms us. But, God's the ultimate window cleaner there. He's the one that's wiping away the dirt. And I just want to make sure that I don't get in the way, and that I keep doing the things that I can do, be it work on my health, work on my understanding of him, work on how and this is being around guys like you and Rob are different than me and have been this influence. And this is where, the gifts Ephesians 4 talks about that the gifts are given to build up the body to the full measure of Christ, so that we have unity in Christ. Well, what's the point of the gift? Is your gift is supposed to make me better in the area where you're gifted, and we're supposed to grow up to the full measure of Jesus. And man, you guys have been that influence on me. Yeah. It has been such a blessing to follow Jesus with you.
You said a thing there where you talked about not wanting to be in the way, and for me, the answer to that question, the motivating factor, is I was not the guy that wanted to be known. I've never been a wanted to be out in the front person, and for me, it was just always not wanting to be in the way. And in order to do that, in order to help be the one that doesn't get in the way of people seeing who Jesus is, and how that relationship can truly change a person's life, and how really that lifestyle is the full life that I think most people really desire. I had to be a better reflection of him, and the constant motivation to learn more, understand more. Bob, you've been a huge part of that in me. I mean, you push me with questions, and where, quite honestly, there's been times when you question, you bring questions or thoughts that neither one of us end up landing on, but where we move, but it pushes us past. But the desire to be, to be able to get my head around those things and say, okay, so if that's the thing, then how does that affect how I reflect Jesus to others? The other thing for me is that I can't do it on my own. So I maintain, you guys know you guys are like top tiers in my relationships, but I maintain many relationships that I lean into to make sure that I'm not the one in the way, that I'm helping people see through to what it really looks like to follow Jesus. And, I'm a terrible example most of the time, but at least I hope I'm pointing in the right direction so that look at the good examples. And so that's kind of, I guess, the way I answer that question.
I heard someone say, and I say this to my congregation, look, the closer you look at me, the more disappointed you're going to be. So what I hope is that you see me and you realize in my mind it's there by the grace of God go I, and you realize what the good stuff you saw really is higher and deeper than anything that came from me. All of your relational connections, Rob, and I know Mike, you would say this as well, the fact that you know all of these different people from all of these different fields in all of these different disciplines gives you such a breadth of understanding and your intelligence to be able to comprehend that and distill that in a practical way. Man, that's been awesome. And I echo what you say about there's sometimes I'll call you up and I'll be like, hey, what about this? What if this says this?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things on our road to change that we should never be afraid of is to have a wrong idea. If we're afraid to have the wrong theology for a time, we're not going to grow at all. It's okay if you have a bad idea about God, you're not God. But just don't be so stubborn that when you realize that our idea starts to fall apart, that you just can't shift and grow and change, right?
And I don't think God's offended if we see something, out of focus for a season. I don't think he's offended. I think he's big enough to handle that. So, and then provides us the way to see past that into a better focus.
Yeah, I think if bad theology was on God's naughty list somewhere, unless its intent was to ultimately deceive and harm people, man, I think we'd have been in trouble a long, long time ago. And
Yeah.
I think I was thinking this morning that, at the end of when Paul, that whole chapter, he writes on what love is, and then he kind of gets into the weeds of faith and, hope and love. And he said, I'm looking at all this through some kind of glasses that have got some film on it. I can't quite make it all out and explain it. Mm-hmm. And I think God gives us room to do that. Because I think if we could fully comprehend his majesty, I'm not sure he's majestic. I think we can identify some things that are majestic, right? And see it in pieces and parts, but man, the whole of who he is and understand. Well, I think maybe, I can't remember who said this, but maybe your God is too small.
Yeah. If you can understand everything about God, well, then that's
right.
Not really a God.
That's
There's
right.
no majesty in something that you can fully conceive of as a human.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I for me, you guys know I've been way more toward the relational side of things, and you guys help keep me real square on making sure that, hey, let's keep leaning and understanding who Jesus is and how he interacted on our planet, in the culture, in the day, and the people that he interacted with, so we can have a more accurate application for us as we try to reflect him back in our day to day. And what I have found for me is the thing that is the hardest, has been the hardest in following Jesus, is the relationships that I've harmed and not been able to find restoration back in. There's somewhere in there that I didn't do a good job of helping them understand clearer who Jesus was. Bob, I think you say this a lot on the podcast, that we're we're not seeing Jesus the same way. So it's allowed us to say, hey, we're not going to be together. Now, again, if you're in a terribly abusive situation, I get that. They create boundaries, barriers, and things like that. But when you were once friends, dear friends, and close friends, and served together, whatever, for me, those have been the hardest things, And I told someone one time, man, some of my biggest, regrets is I can't go back to some people and go, I'm sorry. I was just a moron, and for me, that's. I want to make sure that I keep relationships where we can be that. I was thinking of when Rob was in the hospital, and me and Bob, we were strongly talking about a subject. I don't remember what it was. Poor Rob, he's just trying to rest, and we're going at it, man. And I think people thought we were going to come to blows. It's like that's how we were. We're working it out, and we went and had hamburger, and we sat down and like, oh. These are kind of how the things that we're talking about are lining up, but either one of us or Rob could have just been so pissed off at us that we'd never be friends again. And I thought, we've got so much skin in the game that's like, I can't afford in my life to write somebody to write you guys off. Yeah. Because you have such longevity with me. And the hopes and dreams of who I want to become and continue becoming. You guys, because of our longevity and relationship, and the fact that we've not always agreed, we've not always liked each other at times or whatever, but we were always committed that we were going to be friends. We were not going to let perspective or difference or decision or whatever damage our friendship. That was a non-negotiable. And because of that, I'll say, you guys continue to help me grow and become more and more and more of who God is working me into. And it's not. I think none of us would say, "Oh, that's so easy." It's like, no, it's not. It's a commitment. It's intentional. So I'm grateful for that, that we've kind of been able to forge this, friendship over time that has faced all kinds of challenges, from working together, never doing that before, to the place, situations we had found were challenging, life changes and all those kinds of things and hard decisions. And yet, man, the goal was not to make the things easier. The goal was to help one another become like Christ and to hopefully model for others what relationships that Jesus would build would look like. As imperfect as they are on our part, they're moving in a direction toward him,
You're not going to want to miss where this interview goes. It's a great interview. And Mike, he's so humble. He's like, yeah, you guys rub off on me. You guys rub off on me. But, he's really rubbed off on us just the same way. That's really what life is, that we are a body of Christ and we all have different gifts. And I learned from your gifts and you learn from my gifts. And we all try and lean into the full measure of Jesus within us by earnestly seeking the greater gifts, the one that helps us focus on being like Jesus with others and for others, living like him. Not out of our own effort, not out of pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps, but just through the grace of God in cooperation with him by setting our sights on the greater thing, that we fix our eyes on the prize and run the race like Jesus did, who is the originator of what we are doing, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. Man, I hope that you are surrounded by people that even where things get tense, you're just leaning into those relationships and trying to find more Jesus together. Man, don't quit, people. It is just not worth it. Not unless you absolutely have to, and it's a toxic situation. As long as they keep coming back to the table to have the discussion, keep showing up, because that's on the other side of that. That's where we're going to find Jesus, through prayer and thoughtful consideration of others, believing the best about him as we lean in. That's where it's at. God, will you reshape us into the image of your Son together as we lean into these relationships with each other? as we try and find you, as we wrestle together with our pursuit of you, as you reshape and refine and help us understand our misconceptions and how we're not hearing each other. Help us figure out how to approach your scriptures, these 66 writings, in a way that where we can start seeing them the same way and understanding what you would have for us to help guide us on this journey. We have this heart because we know it doesn't just matter for us, it matters for those around us. Because when we get more of you, those around us get to experience more of you through us. Make us more like your Son every day. Amen. Listen, I'm really grateful that you tuned in. Just a quick...
And being willing to be less than the least.
Not the stinger again. All right, let's try that one more time. Just a quick recap. There we go. Lean into the friendships, man. And you might not see yourself as a leader, but leading is just doing what Jesus did. You do what Jesus did, you're going to find that you're leading. You're stepping out somewhere instead of sitting back in the crowd. And hopefully you're stepping out and other people who are following Jesus are stepping out with you. And together, the body of Christ moves and shines its light. So look, we're doing a lot of pre-taped here over the summer. We'll return for some live streaming with the chat and all the things. But please, by all means, leave comments, reach out to us, and just imagine what it would be like if, I hope in that interview you've seen a little bit of what it might be like if we lean into our friendships together. How beautiful that can be. And just imagine if that was church. Relationships where people didn't quit you and they just loved you and they just kept leaning in and they just kept leaning in and caring about you. And we kept reconsidering Jesus together to get more. Just what would it be like? How wonderful would it be if you could invite your friend to hang out with a group of people and you knew for certain that that group of people wouldn't try and fix or sort or condescend or give condesempathy, but actual true empathy, and saw through their eyes and understood them and didn't try and fix them. Man, if the church was known as the place you could bring your questions because they were going to sit in those questions with you and wrestle alongside you. Man, I hope that's where your heart is. If you know people who share that heart, man, forward this over. Let's get this thing going. I truly believe that God is going to bring greater unity, and we need to pursue it. Look, with that, wouldn't be a podcast without the socials. That's the one thing. It's not the content. It's just the socials, the social media. That's what makes it a podcast, right? So, look, you can always reach out to us at X, at Take Up Your X, Facebook and Instagram, a Jesus Followers Podcast, Rumble, Jesus Follower Podcast, YouTube, Jesus Follower Channel. We check our socials, so hit us up. If you don't hear back from us, we are just AFK, and we'll be back as soon as possible. But we will read all those and follow up. All right. Listen, it is truly my hope that the light of Jesus would shine through all that you do, and that as you go through your day, people would see that light and to give glory to our Father in heaven. Be well.
Yes, you now have a concert side table at the fabulous Blue Note, Madison near Dearborn, Chicago's Mecca for moderns, and for the people who play it that way. Currently, the Blue Note is featuring Count Basie, his famous piano, and his big new band. Yes, it's what you've been waiting for. It's Count Billy Basie, and here's the man himself.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Count Basie and the band. Sincerely, you're going to enjoy. We hope you enjoy our little program, because we're going to have fun working for you. Now, in our first number, we featured Joe Newman on trumpet, Eddie Lockjaw Davis on tenor. A little thing we call the Blee Blop Blues.